Lanson champagne doesn't undergo malolactic fermentation. When I was approached about doing this tasting, I didn't realise that anybody in Champagne didn't routinely undergo malolactic fermentation. So it was a real learning curve for me too. And the idea of tasting these champagnes, we're not looking at quality. We are looking at the taste profile of the champagne. You've got clusters of champagnes in different areas. And when you looked at which those champagnes were, you realised then that these were particularly the ones that were suitable for aperitif, these were particularly suitable for food. We would like to think that there is a way that we can communicate better to the public what it is about individual champagnes, how to define an individual champagne to somebody very succinctly. 20 years ago, if you had mentioned that a wine was hand-picked, that's fairly obvious, but they'd have gone, well, aren't they all? If you had said that a wine was barrel fermented, they'd have gone, what exactly does that mean? So it's not impossible that at some stage malolactic fermentation, or malolactic conversion, if you're being really technical, could actually become an understood concept on a wider scale, within the context of champagne, within the context of wine appreciation. The most important thing is, having tasted them, is to then actually see where they fit relative to each other. Let's start off on the Mumm Cordon Rouge. Does anyone want to stick their neck out where they would personally put this champagne? It is personal, it's completely subjective. Zesty cooked fruit you're going for, not far off centre. Well, I have to say I had it not far off centre, I had it slightly the other side. I had it on between the mellow and the cooked fruit slightly. The acidity on here puts you towards the zesty, but I personally found the fruit flavours were more secondary rather than primary. Moving on to the next one, Merge and Chandon. This I would put further up. I'd still put it slightly in the cooked fruit department, but it is definitely fresher. Wine number 3, Besserat de Bellefonds. Cuvée des Moines, from the Lanson family, although it's not actually strictly a Lanson champagne, it's the same ownership. And this is one which you probably haven't come across in the past. This is, to me, very definitely down on the zesty range of the scale. Veuve Clicquot. Any opinions anywhere on the scale? Bottom right. I was definitely on the very fresh zesty on this one. You agree? On the line. On the line. Lanson Brut Black Label. Any comments, opinions? Zesty. This was my top right-hand corner practically, and this was very zesty, very fresh, very lively, and it was very interesting. If you go back from this, and I go back and taste your Moet, the complete contrast in style. Taittinger, you had it bottom left. That's exactly where I had it. I had it as very mellow, very, very much on the cooked fruit, but in a positive cooked fruit way. Very much to the roasted apple, sort of caramelized roasted apple flavors. It's got lovely acidity, which is more of a sensation than a flavor in this instance. The wine number 7, Perrier-Jouet. For me, it's got the citrus, but it's still got the sort of the caramelized type, the buttery flavors. We move swiftly on to Bollinger. I personally had it on mellow and fresh originally. Today I got it mellow cooked.
I was just going to say that I could taste like the fresh fruit, but there was a sweetness in there that drew me more towards the cooked fruit.
Well, certainly I agree with you. Of all the wines we tasted, all of them undergo malolactic fermentation, as you would expect in Champagne, with the exception of the Lanson and the Besserat. And it was very interesting. On the tasting that we did when we had these 34 champagnes, all the non-malolactic wines, bar one, which I'll explain in a minute, all the non-malolactics appeared up in the fresh, zesty side. They were very pure, very clean, very fruit-driven. And it seems that this non-malolactic gives a much more acidity-driven fruit, much fresher primary fruit flavour profile. And it was a very, very interesting way of seeing how suddenly actually the malolactic fermentation, which, as I say, I hadn't even considered as an issue in champagne production previously, makes a very clearly different style of champagne. I very much feel that these non-malolactic style are very much an aperitif champagne. They're a sharpener, they make the juices run in your mouth, they make the juices run in your stomach, so they're an ideal aperitif. I rang my chap who does ours, he's actually over for a tasting today, who does our Gruyere champagne, and he's based in Rilly. And I said to him, Damien, talk to me about malolactic. He said, what about it? And I said, what about not doing it? Oh, absolute folly. Nobody can make a decent champagne without it. Okay, fine. Cru? Well, that's cru. And so I then spoke to somebody else who did know malolactic. And they said, well, you know, it's very important. Malolactic inhibits some of the flavours, it changes them, it perverts them. So it's like the malolactic in barrel debate in Bordeaux. Everyone has their opinion. And it's very interesting. But I do think that it has a stylistic difference, which is long term. Whereas the Malo debate in Bordeaux, it's actually 18 months later, you can't taste the difference. So that is a very stylistic, defining feature. And so for a customer who wants a bright, fresh, citrusy wine, then this is what they need to know. They need to know that this is a wine, the style of wine they need to go for is this non-Malo style.